If you've seen one marketing agency, you've seen them all, right? Or have you? We're going to dig into that in today's episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker, and on this podcast, we talk to all sorts of different successful people because we want to learn what they have learned that has made them so successful, because you can learn so much more from your failures than you're ever going to learn from your successes. And while a smart person learns from their own mistakes, a genius learns from the mistakes of others. So that's why we bring these people in, so that they can share the good, bad, and ugly with all of us, and then we can each take something away that we didn't know before. So my guest today is coming to us from the Netherlands by way of Canada. His name is Behdad Jam. I'm just gonna cut that part out.
Oh, good.
Behdad Jamshidi. That's what I was gonna say.
I like it. I've never heard that one before, but that is impressive.
Oh my gosh, dyslexic moment. His name is Behdad Jamshidi, but his friends call him B. So B, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show.
I might just keep that part in because that was hilarious.
That was really good. I've never heard that name said like that, so it's impressive. It's a new one.
Your next evolution, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you are the founder of CJAM Marketing, and you are in a great space where you are a marketing broker, where you are bringing people together to find the right marketing agency. Because anyone who's been in business, people always say, like, go test out like three marketing agencies, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Go interview three people, pick the best one. There's like even TV shows where people are picking houses, right? And they have to pick three. You kind of have a bit of a different approach to that, or have seen that to not be as effective. Tell us a little bit more about what you do, B.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, we have the same background, so it's always kind of cool to start there because I used to be an engineer, used to do sales engineering for a very long time. So I used to do a lot of business consulting for a lot of mid-sized companies. So I talked to businesses anywhere from about 50 to 1,000 type employee range with like C-level perspective, IT perspective, building out roadmaps for them. How do you get from A to B to C within technology? And that used to be what I used to do, right? I took that same skill set over to the marketing world, where I started understanding that in the marketing space, most businesses didn't understand marketing, and most marketing people didn't really understand business. So there's always this gap. And in the beginning, I used to do websites, Google Ads, SEO, but very quickly hated doing 8-hour websites on the weekend.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, didn't want to do that. And so I started basically working with different partners. And as I worked with those partners, they didn't speak the business language when sitting in meetings, or they would pick up work that they shouldn't pick up. And so it drove me nuts.
Yeah.
So just thinking in my head very naively, I was like, maybe if I find 10 marketing partners, I'd be able to solve all the world's problems. That was super naive because I've talked to over 821 of them in the last 5 years, and basically work with about 12% of that. So just on your numbers where you're saying like, talk to 3 and get 1. I have to talk close to like 10 to 15 before I find one that I like. And it's for like a very specific thing, typically.
Wow. Well, so why do you think that disconnect is? Like, why isn't that more understood between those two things?
A lot of it comes from the fact that almost anyone can start a marketing agency. There is no filter. You could go take a course tomorrow, and then the next day you could say, well, I do social media management, or I build out websites, or I do SEO. And a lot of businesses don't understand how to ask the right questions to find out where people's skill set kind of comes from. And a lot of marketing agencies actually start out from someone working in a marketing agency, taking care of, like, let's say Google ads or Facebook ads, decide that they don't like the way the agency is doing something. So then they leave and run it on their own, but they don't know how to run an agency. They know how to do Facebook and Google ads, right? And a lot of the times those people don't really get picked by customers because they don't know how to sell properly. And so they're like the executors, and it doesn't work very, very well. So there's this mismatch of just communication, understanding, and just 90% of partners are not very good.
Well, and I just think, like, when I first started out, I knew I needed help, but I didn't even know what questions to ask. I didn't know where to find the people. And, one of the people that I ended up going with at one point, she wasn't from this country. She was from a different country, so she was cheaper. And because I was just starting out, I was self-funded. I didn't have the client base to refund my marketing. So I wasn't open to spending a lot more. And I thought she was doing a great job until I got a message from someone on LinkedIn that said, hey, your most recent post is a direct copy of mine. Like, I don't mind you using my information, but please credit it. And I didn't put that up.
Oh gosh.
I know, I was mortified. I was like, I am so sorry. I will fix this. I will take care of this. And so it was a big learning, opportunity. And thank goodness that the woman that it happened to, she was so kind and generous about it. And, we're friendly now through LinkedIn, but it's just one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. So is that part of what you offer at CJAM?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot of this. So the way you make relationships really last is actually setting expectations on the front end. So a lot of times businesses come to me and I will do my full deep dive up front with them to understand their business, where they're headed, profit margins, who their competitors are, all that stuff that you really need to understand around a business to go, which marketing channels actually make sense. So I've had people come and say, well, I want SEO. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't have X, X, and X set up to do that. Like, so that doesn't make sense. Have you thought about going around this way? And also like resetting the expectations. So a lot of the times, more with the smaller businesses, people are like, well, I want to rank number 1 for this keyword. I'm like, okay, hold on. Maybe we'll just do a consulting session where I kind of break down how marketing works and how to think about it so that when you do go to hire someone, maybe I don't have the right partner because they might be too small, or they need a freelancer, for example, to kind of start out. But at least you have some base foundational knowledge to know what to look for and what expectation to have in that marketing channel you're doing. And then when I'm working with typically, like, let's say some larger businesses that are between like the 3 and 10 million or 3 and $30 million range, at those scenarios, those people have thrown enough things at the wall where something has stuck. They found product market fit, but at that point they need strategy. And so you ask them what their marketing strategy is, and most go, well, we just run Facebook ads. I'm like, that's not really a strategy. So at that point, to get to that next level of scale, my job is to go, well, let me help you implement that strategy with a fractional CMO or some sort of strategic agency so that then you know which channels you're going to be doing and what your long-term game is so that you can basically tie all the KPIs and the metric back to what you're doing. So there's different levels that I deal with when it comes to different businesses, and just setting expectations is a lot of it, and then education.
Yeah, I see that a lot in so many different industries, that setting expectations is a huge piece of it, because people throw around SEO all the time. And if people even know what it stands for, search engine optimization, that doesn't mean they understand what that means. So I can see that being a large part of it. But I'm curious about how you amassed, what did you say, 861?
821.
821. How do you approach them? How do those conversations go? Like, kind of, what does that process look like for you?
Yeah. Well, it evolved. So in the beginning, it was a lot of me going to networking events, meeting different people, building out those relationships. Once you get to a certain number, certain couple of hundreds, people start basically sending people to you. And so you start working with different partners. You find out different partners that are really good. They then introduce you to other good partners. And so basically I have an influx of people being like, just today, this morning, I had someone, hey, I know a bunch of really solid marketing agencies. Can I make intros to you? And I'm like, sure, but I'm booking into like July at this point when it comes to meetings. And typically how I approach the marketing agency space, whenever I have a marketing agency conversation, I will always have a 30-minute conversation upfront initially, just to get the feeling for the person. I mean, after you do over 821, you get a pretty quick read on what level an agency's at, how the founder thinks, what their values are, that type of stuff. If I like that first 30-minute conversation, I will ask them for work upfront, and I'll say, hey, can I see this based on what you told me? And if I like that work, then I have 2 lists in the background where I have like a paid list. That's another filter for me. And I go through about 30 to 35 questions during an hour of the agency to get the insides and outs of it, down to, what kind of customers do you really help? What gaps do you have in your processes? How are you hiring? Where are you hiring? Where are people built from? What kind of industries do you really help? Which ones don't you really help? And just go through basically a ton of questions so that I feel comfortable being like, yes, I'd refer you to a customer.
So do you have like a massive spreadsheet in the background?
Yeah, massive
Yes,
database.
engineering.
Yeah, exactly. Massive database hiding in the background. And that database is going to grow very soon because I'm learning how to be more efficient with what I do.
Well, there's always new things coming out and different ways to make things, easier. How do you add AI and automation and other sort of tools into your process, and kind of how has that evolved?
That's a great question. Not fully yet. So AI might come down the road for me to become more efficient, but I'm never going to really use AI to do the matchmaking or anything like that. It might be something where I feed things into forget that database platform. It's not coming on the top of my head, but basically feed information to a database and then get AI to basically pull the information that I want based on the fields that I have, right? So
Sure.
if I'm like a social media agency and things like that, I don't need to be scrolling through and going through filters. You could probably put an AI over that to basically extract the data that you need to be like, give me my 10 agencies that have over 10 years experience in social media and have worked with X industry. And it's based off my list. I'd be doing stuff like that.
Mm.
But I haven't used it so much yet. I basically getting to that point, but not just yet.
I mean, it's just an interesting thing on how it's all kind of rolling out and adopting it and changing it. So, we talked about how you've been meeting the agencies. What is your process like for meeting the customers and the business owners? Like, do they even know that they have a problem? Or the ones that come to you are the ones that are like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. Please help.
It's a little mixture of both. So the type of customers that typically come to me are ones that go, well, I need an SEO agency or I need Google Ads, and they already know kind of like what they want. They just have, for example, I have a partner that is spending about, not a partner, a business spending $40,000 to $50,000 on ads and is going, I don't think my people are actually any good. I look at it, I'm like, yeah, they don't look very good. So helping him basically find and replace is that scenario. You have other people that come in and go, look, this is what I'm doing for marketing. Am I doing the right thing? Like, what would you do? What's the next piece? What do I add? So that's the other type of customer. I'll talk to them and do some front end consulting on the front end and then go, this is the strategy that I would approach. Are you on board? And then you have other customers that go, I somehow got to 7 or 8 figures by spending money on, Facebook and Google, or I found a certain email newsletter that built my thing. And they go, well, we don't know what the next step is. And so then I help there with planting like a fractional CMO and getting them in. Usually, though, what the process looks like is I'll jump on a 30-minute up to an hour typically call to go through the entire business, understand what they need. And then based off that, I start making recommendations because a lot of what I do is around personality fit. I need to understand how the founder thinks, how the CEO thinks, what their team is built on the inside, what they look at in terms of metrics. Are they super detail oriented? Do they want someone strategic, someone that wants to execute? There's so many factors.
Yeah.
And then you go on the agency side and go, who would match this customer the best based on where they're at, what their budget is, what size business they have, and where they're going.
Mm. So we were talking before we started recording, and I was like, wow, we just have to stop and get this actually in the interview. But you were telling me about how you even came upon this because, as you mentioned, you were in engineering before. So let's go back into telling that story.
Cool. Yeah, so initially when this started out, someone at my old job, we were out for lunch one day, and he's like, I met this guy and he does SEO for dentists, search engine optimization for dentists, and he's making $50,000 a month passively. And I was like, okay, what is SEO and how's this guy making passive income? Like, money was never really interesting to me. Time is very interesting to me. Like, can I get my time back? Which, by the way, I have not gotten a lot of my time back yet.
In process, right?
Yeah, we'll get there. But basically he had this like YouTube video. It was like a 2-hour YouTube video. And I watched it and I went, and I remember turning around and looking at my wife. She's on the couch and I was just standing next to the TV. And I was like, I think I'm gonna take this guy's $500 course. And my wife was like, well, if you do, you better make some money out of it. And it's just like this like thing. I was like, all right, fine. So I took the course. The course had about 4 hours on website building, Google Ads, SEO, 444. And then I was like, this is not enough information. So I actually went and took more information, like more courses on website building, took a 25-hour course on Google Ads, started reading textbooks on SEO. And then I started doing the work for a customer or two, right? Like friends that are close to you or people that I kind of got as customers, and very quickly hated doing 80-hour websites on the weekend. Like that was not fun. Especially when you're already making 6 figures, you're like, I don't really need to do this on the weekend. I can enjoy my life. But I got into like meeting partners. And then as I met partners, I noticed that most marketing agencies didn't understand business and vice versa, which we talked about. And now I live in the Netherlands and I'm a marketing broker and I no longer do engineering.
So walk me through your thought process. You were at work at a lunch with a friend. What made you be curious in something else other than the time aspect? Like, were you unhappy with what you were doing?
No, that's the thing. I actually really enjoyed my job because it was so fast paced. It was high paced. Technology was always changing, so I was always learning. I just love learning. Like even at like my old job, I'd be reading books. Like so before I even got into this, I had a goal of reading like 60 books in 5 years, and I got it done in like 3.5 years. Like right, and I used to take leadership courses. I used to take emotional intelligence courses. Like I was always a learner.
Mm.
I still am. And business is the ultimate learning tool, both personally and professionally, really.
So do you find that your personal development is more, less, or the same than when you were working at the engineering job?
It's exponentially more. Yeah, it's insane. So just to give some context, at my old job, like I would take a lot of emotional intelligence courses. I would take leadership courses. I did conflict resolution, mediation. Like I would actively search for these things. These weren't things that my work would do for me. I was like, I want to learn about these things to be a better human,
Yeah.
and about myself. And at that time, I also was doing counseling. So I've done counseling for over 7 years. Now I actually have two counselors for different things, and they have different perspectives, and I like it. But once you get into business, and when you so I was basically an engineer and running my business for about 3.5 years, doing both. And I was actually excelling at both, doing it. But that also, I was always careful around my like mental health, because I was like, this could burn you out, right? If you're not like careful with what you're doing. So as soon as you take away the full-time job, and to give context, I had a year and a half of runway just in the business. This is not even like personal savings. I had a year and a half runway, right? I didn't have to make money that January that I left for the next year and a half, and I'd still be fine. But mentally, as soon as you take away the full-time job, you feel you have no security. And so my scarcity mindset took into place, and it's been about a year and a half, and I'm consistently still working at how do I shift my scarcity mindset to looking at things in terms of abundance and opportunities, and not thinking about outcomes, but actually enjoying the process. You know how people say, enjoy the process, don't worry about the outcomes. When you actually become an entrepreneur, you actually learn to live that, and that you now apply experience to that,
Yes.
right? So to answer your question, like it's like exponentially more. Your highs are way higher, your lows are way lower. But over time, you learn to kind of like the highs actually start hitting less, and then the lows start hitting less. So you actually start becoming a little bit more level, because you're able to experience those emotions better. That's kind of what I'm focusing on now.
I had the same sort of experience where there was nothing wrong with my job before. It was me. I didn't feel fulfilled enough. Like I needed more, and being that learner and seeking and finding all of these things. And now that I've been out of it for 3.5 years now, it's one of those things where I think like, man, all those people back still working, like they're missing this bit of this growth that we experience as entrepreneurs. And I think like how can we bring that back in? And I know they have wellness programs and stuff, but it's just I don't know how to replicate that same experience.
Yeah, because you're talking about needing to put someone in an uncomfortable and uncertain situation. Like that's literally what creates the growth, is
Yeah.
that like you being pushed by your edge. And you know how like in corporate life, and I mean, I guess in everyday life, they talk about how like, oh, if you're just outside your comfort zone, that's where you're learning. And then there's this part where it's like you're way outside your comfort zone and you're not learning. Yeah. In business though, if you're thrown into the way outside the comfort zone, you can't say I'm not going to figure this out. Like you have to figure it out. There's no other choice. So you have to make yourself become comfortable with it. I don't know if you can put that into a corporate environment, really,
I don't know
unless
if you
someone.
can either. Because I mean, there's been moments where I felt like I was hanging by my fingernails off the edge, like, oh gosh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
fall into the abyss.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
like, what
you
did you learn
crawl
about
your way
yourself
out.
though? Yeah, you just keep going into the abyss, and you're like, all right, I got out. And then next time you're in the abyss, you're just like, ah, okay, I'm here again. I know that it's gonna probably take me about a week or two, and I'm gonna get out of it. And you just
Yeah.
kind of,
And then it's
right?
not that bad.
Yeah,
It's not that
yeah,
bad. It's one of those things like throw off the edge and you're like, oh wait, I can stand here.
yeah. I think it's funny. I just went for sushi with one of my friends before this, and this morning I woke up at 5 because there's just so much stuff on the brain, and I haven't done actually woke up at 5 in a long time. This was like when I first started my business. There was times where I would just wake up at 5. I learned to like evolve with that, where I was like, okay, if I'm up at 5 and my brain's not sleeping, I'm just gonna go work for 2 hours, and then I'm gonna go take a nap at from like 7 to like 8:30 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of what happened today. I was like, oh, woke up at 5, try to go back to sleep, do my like mindfulness. Yep, no, it's not working today. Came and worked for 2 hours, and then went back, took a nap, and then went at lunch. And while we're talking at lunch, he's like, how's things going? I'm like, they're going well. I mean, I probably have like 15 different things running at the same time and trying to make things go. But I like in that moment, I was just like, wow, like my resistance has grown quite a bit to be able to handle all of these things that we're doing at the same time. And I'm still here eating sushi and enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the last week of school here for my kids, and it's been blowing and going. Like there's been something every single day at the school and every single day after school. And with two kids and two different schedules and keeping it. And there was this moment where I was at my daughter's event yesterday, and I was like, even though I was so busy and was able to get it done, like I didn't get to go to as many of my son's things because I was working full time. I didn't have that sort of freedom. So it's an interesting shift in things. And then of course I was working till 9:30 at night because there was other things that I wanted to get done. Yes, they needed to get done, but I also wanted to finish it and complete it. So it's just a sort of a different issue. And I agree with you of that time is much more interesting to me than the money aspect of it. That's a lovely bonus, but it's not necessarily the driving factor.
100%. And I don't know how parents do business and have kids and like it's mind-boggling to. I couldn't imagine. I would break down. I think so. I'm really impressed by you.
Well, it's just like the next evolution of anything. When you go from, elementary school to junior high, huge growth, right? Or go from high school to college, huge growth. So you just learn, you just expand, and you're forced to because
Yeah.
this little thing is like dependent on you for life, so you figure it out.
Yeah, no, 100%. That makes sense.
I have enjoyed this conversation so much. There's so many similarities, and you were just such a pleasure to talk to. When in your journey did you feel like I've made it or I'm successful, or are you still chasing that?
So if you look on the outside in, people will say I am very successful in what I do. Internally, I'm battling with the worthiness of regardless of what you do.
Mm.
So for me, if you look on paper in terms of money and things saved up and blah 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 and the business doing what it does, people are like, "You're inspiring. You've done like some crazy things." I'm like, "Yeah, a lot of that's just from like not wanting to fail. So a lot of that just pushes forward." And so I think I'm getting to the point where I'm like happy with what I've done. And it's not even like being happy with what I've done, it's just feeling worthy regardless of what I do at the same time.
Mm,
So now I'm trying to just enjoy, like I said, the process of like, hey, I'm building this thing, and as I'm building this thing, it's shifting me into becoming a different person. And
mm.
I'm curious to see who this person's going to become.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of where I'm.
So I know that you're first generation, that your parents were immigrants. How have they viewed this journey, and have they been supportive of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. My parents being immigrants, obviously survivor mindset is really set in. And so it was always like become an engineer, doctor, lawyer. I'm sure you hear that all the time. Or accountant. That one also gets added in there too. But as I kind of went through the journey, I did it slowly. So I went from like doing the engineering thing, building this up slowly. And funny enough, my dad was my accountant. So the first like year or two, he was like, yeah, don't leave your day job. Third year, still probably don't leave your day job. Around the 3.5, 4 years, I'm like, Dad, I think I need to leave. And he's like, yeah, I think you need to leave.
Mm,
So like him seeing the numbers, he was like, okay, yeah, I think this kid's got some potential. And so that was like actually really reassuring, where my dad is always the guy that's like, don't do it. Don't do it. Like even my mom's always, now they're like so supportive, where I'll tell my mom, like, Mom, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like this business keeps building. The next level is just, I don't know how to build the next level. And she's like, yeah, but you'll never know unless you try. And you don't want to get older and regret it. And you have tons of energy now. So use it.
mm.
So my mom's become super, super wise when I talk to her. And I really appreciate like the time that she gives me and gives me such good advice. And it's such basic advice, but it's just from like going through a hard life. And yeah, so she's a great support mechanism. So is my dad.
Oh, that's so lovely. I'm so glad to hear that. I think, there's been several people on the show who have been first generation or immigrants themselves. And I do feel from talking with them that there's some sort of different mindset, a different, deeper level of grind within them of just going forward and figuring it out.
Yeah, that's a skill set of mine. It's just grit. So if you ever hear like my parents' story, which is crazy, their stories are nuts. But my dad, when he immigrated, he was working. So he could have been a doctor in Iran. Like his grades were so high that he could have been a doctor, but because of politics, he had to leave.
Mm.
And so in Canada, he started working as a construction worker, taxi. I remember in Vancouver, he had 3 gas station jobs that he was working just to support us. And then when we had my brother, he's like, oh no, I can't continue this way. And so he went back to school while working the 3 gas station jobs and then started his own accounting business. And
Wow.
so when you watch your parents go through that, plus my dad would always sit me down on Sundays on top of my schoolwork from grade 1 to grade 7, I had about 7 other books that I needed to do. So I had to write a page out of the dictionary. I need to do a page of math. I need to do phonics. I remember these books because all I wanted to do was I just wanted to go play. And I'm like, why do I have to do these books? It's terrible. And on Sunday, he would check all of them. And I realized in that moment, that's when I learned how to do things really, really fast. But also that's where my grit came in because they forced me to do stuff I didn't want to do. And so the rest of my life, like even engineering, I wasn't super interested in engineering. When I found out like there's like sales engineering job, I was like, cool, I can talk to people and learn about technology. That's cool. I like that. But I never like grit is what got me through like the engineering times, right? Like there's times where you'd go to school at 8 o'clock and we'd leave at like 1 or 2 in the morning because we had all this work to do. And I think just same thing for business, like working 2 jobs, excelling in your full-time job while doing a business, like that all took grit, like doing stuff you don't want to do to kind of get to where you want to get to.
I love that you made the connection between engineering and talking to people, because so often people who meet me in this iteration of my life, when they find out I was an engineer for 20 years, they're like, they scratch their heads. They're just like, how is that possible? Like, what? And I feel like there's such like this mental stereotype, this image that people have of what an engineer is or isn't. But I'd love to hear how you, because I know there's an engineering part to your brain as well. So I'd love to hear kind of as we're wrapping up, how you see that and how you see them working together.
Yeah, I
What
think
you do now.
my engineering brain, like for like all engineers, we're problem solvers. Like that, I think that's just what it really comes down to. Is regardless of if you're an introvert or an extrovert or whatever it is, it's like we like to solve problems, and our brains are constantly solving problems.
Amen.
That's basically it. And so the problem that I've now fixed my brain on is this business problem, and how to bridge this gap. Like, how do I make this gap smaller and smaller so that businesses don't get screwed, especially when it's like in your growth phase, you can only make mistakes so many times.
Yeah.
And so I'm always thinking of how do I make my systems, my processes, my interview process, and how do I make my matches better? And it's a really hard problem to solve, but it's one that I've been dedicating the last 5 years to.
I love that so much. I agree. And I love how words, the importance of words and the meaning of words and how they can really, like, when you find the right word, how it just like, just really works. So I've reframed problem solver as solution creator.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm going to start using that. Yeah, we're solution creators.
My pleasure. I would think solution creator needs to take off.
I think so. Yeah, I think problem solver should be gone. Solution creator is way better.
Yeah, I'd much rather be in, that's the business I'm in. I'm in a solution creation business.
I love it. I'm going to be using that a lot because that's more of an abundance mindset as well.
Exactly, exactly. This has been so much fun. I really appreciated it. We've covered it as we've gone through, but please let the audience know how they can reach out to you and who are the perfect people to work with you.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, anyone who wants to reach out to me, there's kind of 2 places. One is my website, so www.cjammarketing.com. Or on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on there as well, so you can find it from my name, Behdad Jamshidi. And then also I have resources for businesses. So if they ever go to the cjammarketing.com/resources, there's a bunch of like interview questionnaires that I'm adding in there to kind of help businesses find the right partners. So download those, ask those questions in interviews. It'll help you a lot. And I forgot the other part of your question, but that's basically
That's okay. I mean, I think you answered it, so I probably was just too verbose in my questions.
it. I like it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, B. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Catryn.
To the listeners, to the audience, I know you've enjoyed this. I hope you've laughed along with us. It made you have some light bulb moments where you were like, oh my goodness. Please make sure to like this episode, share it with someone who you think is going to be interested in it, and subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes with amazing people just like Behdad Jamshidi, which I didn't get your name all twisted that time. So yay me, pat on the back.
I'm proud.
Until next time, everyone, take care.